vote has failed.
60,000 federal workers face uncertainty. Midnight deadline.
Got some breaking news tonight. Democrats are literally shutting down America's Homeland Security because they can't stop President Trump from enforcing immigration law. While ICE remains fully funded through 2029, Chuck Schumer is willing to cripple FEMA, the TSA, and our cybersecurity defenses just to throw a tantrum. It's not about funding, my friends. This is about sabotage. And here's what's really at stake. When Democrats play games with national security, your family's safety gets compromised when FEMA can't respond to disasters and cybersecurity operations get degraded. Your travel plans get disrupted when TSA operations become strained. Our coastlines become vulnerable when the Coast Guard loses funding. But here's the kicker. ICE deportations continue anyway because Trump secured their funding through 2029. So Democrats are literally destroying critical services for nothing. They're punishing American families because they can't punish ICE. This is what happens when the swamp puts politics over protection. And speaking of national security threats, there's something that defense contractors track that's most Americans are ignoring. Yes, breaking tonight, there is a metal most people never think about, but governments, defense contractors, they track it every day. Now, you know I've spent years watching gold and silver, but the opportunity to stop me cold sits one layer deeper in critical minerals. One metal above all others, titanium. While Democrats sabotage Homeland Security funding, smart Americans are securing metals that power our defense infrastructure. And SAGA Metals gives you direct access to titanium and other critical minerals that governments desperately need. No complicated ETFs or mining stocks, physical metals that you can hold. The same materials that make our fighter jets, satellites, and defense systems possible. When politicians play games with security, you do need to know where to invest. So check out SAGA Metals while Democrats continue their dangerous games with America's safety. There's a special full briefing prepared just for you down below. But wait, my friends, it does get worse. Representative Jason Smith just exposed the real agenda here. Democrats are demanding ICE agents can't monitor polling places. Think about that. They want to ban immigration enforcement from election sites. I mean, why would legal voters fear an ICE presence? They wouldn't. The shutdown threat isn't about funding, it's about protecting illegal voting. They're holding TSA and FEMA hostage just to shield election fraud. Now we have this from John Fetterman, torching his own party. Senator Fetterman calls it ridiculous that they're holding up DHS funding. Watch this.
Having any meaningful, functional impact on ICE because they have unlimited money effectively for right now, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're going to punish all of these other parts, the very important parts of our government, TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA, and cybersecurity. That's what kind of a statement if we announce to our enemies, like, well, our cybersecurity agency, now we're going to be shut down. If I really want to make a move, that probably makes it better. And then, so is that a accurate statement?
It's a fair assessment, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now here I am. Here I am, a Democrat, and I think I ran the whole gamut. You know, I met with Secretary Noem, and I've always treated her with respect. I met with her in my office, and I refused, and I never will engage on the kinds of sexist kinds of terms like ICE Barbie from a lot of the left media.
Yeah, of course. Fetterman always surprises me. He's one of the few Democrats I actually like these days. But his criticism of his own party sets up the breaking news that just dropped from the Senate floor. U.S. Senate has voted 42 to 47 to reject the bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security, meaning a partial shutdown could begin by the end of the week unless a new agreement is reached. Roll call vote. Yeas 52, nays 47. Motion to vote cloture on the motion to proceed to the consideration of H.R. 7147, the Consolidated Appropriations Act. Now we know the Senate rejected the funding bill. Let's dig deeper what experts are saying about which agencies are actually at risk. The DHS shutdown warning. Rosemary Jenks confirms.
$170 billion, right? It was already approved, but the appropriations that normally go just to fund ICE will be just like TSA and just like FEMA. The core of ICE will be shut down because you've checked with appropriation. They're saying no. That's part of this. That could be part of the shutdown, correct?
That is absolutely correct. And I have verified this with the Appropriations Committee. The standard operating costs for the Department of Homeland Security, including ICE and Customs and Border Protection, are not funded by the One Big Beautiful Bill. So that $170 billion has to be spent on the things that were designated in that bill, and that includes new personnel, new equipment, new border wall, not standard operating costs. So when the Department of Homeland Security shuts down tomorrow night, there will be thousands of officers and agents who are putting their lives on the line, who are not getting paid. Now, immigration enforcement will continue because these patriots will keep doing their jobs. They will not be paid, however. Their families will suffer. You know, they may not be able to pay their bills. So this is what the Democrats are doing to immigration enforcement. They absolutely intend to shut down immigration enforcement. It's not going to work, but they're going to make it as painful as possible for the patriots who are doing it.
The expert warning about unfunded operations directly contradicts what Republican leadership is claiming about the scope. Steve Scalise says Democrats say this is about ICE. It's not. ICE is fully funded. The DHS shutdown would instead stop disaster relief, disrupt TSA, and impede Coast Guard operations. Chaos for the American people, just so Democrats can try to make a point.
Let's just look at what would happen if the Democrats get their way. And you can see from their leaders, they are clamoring for another government shutdown. If the Democrats shut down the Department of Homeland Security, they're claiming it's about defunding ICE. But as they know, and as you know, in the Working Families tax cut, we funded ICE through the rest of President Trump's term. So ICE is funded. But what is not funded if the Democrats get their way? They will literally shut down funding for disaster relief in FEMA in the middle of a storm that in New York City alone, you want to see what socialism gets you, 18 people now have frozen to death under the leadership of the socialist Mondami. That's what Democrat leadership gets you. They want to shut down TSA. So just take Atlanta's airport, LaGuardia. Those two airports alone, having been shut down, if the Democrats get their way, will wreak havoc with tens of millions of Americans who just want to go see their family members, want to travel for a wedding, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they're trying to start a small business and want to go to another city to try to create some jobs. They won't be able to do that because Democrats want to have a tantrum, not to defund ICE, because again, ICE is fully funded, but just because they want to cause chaos in America to get open borders.
Text raw feed to 844-840-4963 if you want to get notifications from the Next News Network. Now, Scalise defends that ICE is protected. It raises questions about which agencies actually face disruption. Let's get the official breakdown. News Nation says the clock is ticking for Congress to fund the Department of Homeland Security or face another partial government shutdown. ICE, FEMA, TSA, Secret Service. Current DHS funding runs out at midnight on Saturday.
Let me turn now to Capitol Hill, everybody, where time is ticking for Congress to fund the Department of Homeland Security or face another partial government shutdown. Lawmakers are deadlocked on changes to DHS policies, and agencies within the department warn of what could happen without a deal. News Nation Washington correspondent Tom Dempsey is live for us at the White House. Tom, get us up to speed on this. How soon could we see a funding deal come through, if at all?
Hey, Hey, Marky. Yeah, good morning from the White House. Well, House Speaker Mike Johnson saying votes will happen later today in the Senate on measures to fund the Department of Homeland Security. But here's the thing. We are still waiting for any sort of signs to emerge that a deal has been reached. And when we talk about this possible partial government shutdown, this would impact exclusively DHS and impact agencies like FEMA, the TSA, the Secret Service, and Coast Guard. The heads of those agencies told Congress on Wednesday how their employees would be impacted, including some working without paychecks, others being furloughed. The acting administrator of the TSA shared details of what workers experienced during that record-breaking 43-day shutdown last year, hoping it does not repeat soon.
We heard reports of officers sleeping in their cars at airports to save money on gas, selling their blood and plasma and taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Many were subject to late fees from missed bill payments, eviction notices, loss of childcare, and more, all the while expected to serve their country and perform at the highest level when in uniform.
House Speaker Mike Johnson saying negotiations remain ongoing, with Democrats really pushing for changes to immigration enforcement in order to fund DHS, including requiring federal law enforcement to take off their masks and show proper identification. Republicans, though, say some of those proposed changes go too far, while others want to see penalties for sanctuary cities and require prison time for anyone entering the country illegally. Now, it's interesting to note with all these negotiations happening that some ICE operations will not be impacted because the agency has already received billions of dollars under the one big, beautiful bill that was passed last year. But, Marky, adding on to really the immediacy to find some sort of a deal, some lawmakers have plans to travel overseas for various events, but a deal needs to be reached by the end of tomorrow night. Yeah. Marky?
We'll see if a resolution comes here within the next 24 hours. Tom Dempsey, live for us in Washington. Thank you.
With a Saturday night deadline confirmed, agencies themselves are speaking out about the real-world impact. House Appropriations, GOP, Democrats are barreling us toward DHS shutdown that will hurt real people and communities. FEMA actually warned a government shutdown would severely disrupt FEMA's ability to reimburse states for disaster relief costs and to support recovery from disasters.
Government shutdown would severely disrupt FEMA's ability to reimburse states for disaster relief costs and to support our recovery from disasters. Delays in deploying financial assistance to affected communities would hinder timely disaster results. States and communities would be forced to wait for long-term response work to continue. A lapse in appropriations would also result in the furlough of many FEMA employees, limiting the agent's ability to coordinate effectively with the state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. This will hinder communication, planning, joint operations, effective disaster relief outcomes, and complicate recovery efforts. Crippling FEMA's central operations and recovery-related work will come at the expense of the American people.
The expense of the American people. We saw this play out before. We knew this fight was coming again. FEMA's warning about disaster relief cuts deep, but the cybersecurity angle makes it even more alarming. Oh boy.
You talk about the impact on our national security posture. You said, that the government shuts down, cyber threats do not. That was a line that I will certainly take away from this hearing. And with the rise of China's use of cyber warfare, obviously CISA is just an incredible part of our firewall, such a key force in being able to keep our networks and the connected infrastructure safe. So can you describe the impact of a shutdown on your operations and the ability to maintain those routine cybersecurity measures that we rely on not only at the federal level, but with our state and local partners like in Iowa?
Yeah, Congresswoman, thank you. I think, like I said before, our activities will be strictly limited to protecting life and property. But we will do everything we can to meet the mission during a shutdown. We will have about 35 to 40% of our staff, about 900 people who will be working without pay. And uncertainty and those missed paychecks are a serious hardship. We have a dedicated and amazing staff that works 24/7 and obstructing some of those nation-state adversities that we have. These impacts are not something that we take lightly. And the longer a shutdown drags on, the less sustainable it becomes for our dedicated employees and their families.
How do you like them apples, huh? Leaving us wide open for cybersecurity threats to ravage our nation. That's what Chuck Schumer wants. Democrats even breaking ranks to sound the alarm, too. Democrat Rep. Cellular is warning colleagues not to shut down the government.
Homeland Security is never an easy bill, and it never should be. It deals with real risks, real people, real consequences. And I appreciate the seriousness you brought to this work, and I appreciate the bipartisan spirit that has allowed this subcommittee to function even at times, very difficult moments like now. We're meeting today at a very important time. In just a few days, if Congress doesn't act, the Department of Homeland could face a shutdown. And while the American people may hear the word shutdown and think of Washington politics, what that really means is delayed disaster response, weakened cyber defenses, and uncertainty for the men and women who show up every day to keep this country safe. This is not theoretical. Every member here represents transportation security officers, and we support, they work long shifts to keep our airport secure. Every member relies on FEMA when disaster strikes their state or their district. Every member depends on CISA as cyber threats target hospitals, pipelines, schools, and local governments. Every member recognizes the critical role Secret Service plays and will be playing this year with security around the World Cup and the American 250 celebrations. Every member counts on the Coast Guard, men and women who carry out 11 statutory missions, often under extreme conditions, often with limited resources, and always with professionalism. So let me be clear from the very beginning. The public servants of the Department of Homeland Security have the full respect and support of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. They deserve stability, clarity, and leadership from us.
But are they getting it? Not from Chuck Schumer. It's not just Republicans worrying about security risks. Here's what he's telling his own colleagues. You heard it. Today, acting TSA Administrator Ha Neugen McNeil spoke before the House Appropriations Committee on how another shutdown would impact operations in our workforce, many of whom are still recovering from the last shutdown.
TSA's critical national security mission does not stop during a shutdown. Around 95%, or 61,000 of TSA's employees, are deemed essential and continue to work to protect the traveling public during a shutdown while not getting paid. These TSA employees live and work across the nation within your communities, securing over 430 commercial airports and performing incredibly challenging and demanding jobs.
Beyond the political warning, let's hear directly from TSA, or House Appropriations, my bad. By holding TSA funding hostage, Democrats are risking another cyber attack. Democrats drive towards DHS shutdown deadline, angry that Republicans aren't taking their game seriously. 10-minute drill writes they're trying to punish ICE to satisfy their angry base, but ICE is funded until 2029.
Are barreling towards a shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security with a deadline on Friday and Chuck Schumer continuing to blame Republicans. We are 3 days away from a DHS shutdown, and Republicans have not gotten serious about negotiating a solution that reins in ICE and stops the violence. Democrats will not support a continuing resolution to extend the status quo. So what Schumer's saying there is Republicans have not gotten serious about playing the game that we're playing. Now, ICE is not in question here. ICE is funded through 2029. So this is exclusively about funding for things like FEMA, TSA, the Coast Guard, and our national cybersecurity protections. Those are the things that are going to be defunded by Democrats if they don't get their way with this Friday deadline. And Schumer's saying Republicans won't meet us to play our game and have a serious conversation about their deeply unserious shutdown reminds me a little bit of when my 3-year-old is frustrated that we don't have time to sit down and play a game of Go Fish. He's not very good at Go Fish because he's 3, and a lot of times we'll humor him. But in situations like this, we're a little bit more focused on important things.
I want to be clear. When the government shuts down, cyber threats do not. And our adversaries work 24/7. Even a brief lapse can have lasting consequences.
That was the head of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, highlighting the fact that those threats do not stop, even if that agency loses funding because Democrats are trying to play a little game there. But here's TSA.
As the shutdown went on and on last time, what we did see was an increase in unscheduled absences, which means folks calling out because they could not afford to show up to work.
The other big one to watch is FEMA. We have had a series of terrible winter storms.
So all these security warnings culminate in broader question about what's really driving the standoff, and it brings us back to a familiar political battle. Representative Jason Smith, why should you ban ICE from being at polling places? Illegals are not supposed to vote in America. It doesn't make sense.
Back to the demands that I believe the Democrats are making. It includes needing a warrant to enter private property, banning agents from wearing masks, having badges, having body cameras, prohibiting action at schools, hospitals, and churches. What's the objection to these matters, which is the issue that could result in a shutdown?
Why should you ban ICE from being at polling places? Because illegals aren't supposed to vote in this America. I mean, like, it does not make sense, the requests that they're having. Enforce the rule of law, and that's what President Trump is doing. Apparently, Democrats don't like the rule of law. If they don't like the rule of law, they need to change it. They have never changed it, but they're complaining now.
So here's the bottom line that Chuck Schumer doesn't want you to understand. This entire shutdown crisis exists because Democrats refuse to let Trump enforce immigration law at voting locations. They'd rather cripple cybersecurity and emergency response than allow ICE near ballot boxes, and that tells you everything about their real priorities. So Democrats are willing to sacrifice FEMA disaster response, TSA airport security, Coast Guard maritime protection, and critical cybersecurity operations just to prevent ICE from doing their job at polling places. Meanwhile, ICE deportations continue anyway because President Trump already secured their funding through 2029. This is pure political theater that puts American families at risk while accomplishing absolutely nothing except protecting potential election fraud. The swamp would rather sabotage Homeland Security than secure our elections. Think about that. So do you think the Democrats are more concerned about protecting illegal voters and protecting American citizens? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to check out the Next News merch shop to show your support for America First reporting that cuts through the establishment's lies.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this. Share this now.